My name is Marisol Alvarez, and on the morning of Saturday, June 7th, my world split open with a single text message. I was standing by the stove in our small Westlake apartment, flipping pancakes for my daughters, Camila, age 9, and Sophia, 6. My husband, Diego, had just left for his early warehouse shift. He kissed me on the cheek, same as every morning. He smelled like laundry detergent and coffee. I remember thinking I'd remind him to pick up the girls' favorite juice on the way home, something normal, something safe. That's when my phone buzzed. They took me by surprise. I'm scared. That was all. One message, then silence. I stared at the screen, my brain lagging behind the meaning. They? I whispered. Who's they? My hands trembled as I tried calling him. No answer. Again, nothing. Is Daddy okay? Camila asked. I don't know yet, baby, I replied, trying to steady my voice. I called his job, Alameda Freight and Storage. A woman answered, whispering nervously. They were waiting outside, she said. They had a list. A list. His name was on a list. I ran to the window. Nothing outside but delivery trucks and the quiet hum of the city. But my body was already in panic mode, heartbeat thudding in my ears, hands cold. I texted his cousin Manuel, his old co-worker Arturo, his brother's widow in Pasadena. No one had seen him. Manuel finally replied, ICE grabbed people outside Home Depot. Word is, they're moving fast, hitting spots downtown. Stay inside. Stay inside. That was the advice. Hide. Wait. Pray. The night before, Diego had told me over dinner, something's going on. They've been asking for check-in records again. Guys at work said their uncles were picked up outside church. I brushed it off. We were so careful. We filed everything. I had every paper scanned and backed up on USB. But that night, I saw the worry in his eyes. He barely touched his food. I turned on the TV. Every channel had some mention of it. Immigration raids, 44 detained in one day, most from Westlake, some from the fashion district. The anchor spoke quickly, like they were trying not to inflame anything. But I could see it. The fear was already spreading. There were whispers that military support might follow. I looked around our apartment. Sophia's backpack still hung on the doorknob. Camila's drawing of our family still on the fridge. Diego, in the middle, smiling. And now he was gone. By mid-morning, I couldn't sit still. I left the girls with our neighbor, Lucia, and took the bus to the local ICE processing center on Wilshire. It was already surrounded by people, mothers, wives, husbands, cousins, all clutching folders, crying, shouting names through fences. A guard told us they had no public access today. Detainees are being transferred, he said. But to where, no one knew. That was the first time I truly felt powerless. I saw them take my husband, one woman said, right after he dropped our daughter off at school. They told me I couldn't ask questions. My brother has asthma. They didn't let him bring his inhaler. These weren't criminals. These were working people, parents, sons, quiet neighbors. That afternoon, I went home in a daze. The sun was blazing over LA, but everything felt cold. My daughters ran up to me. Did you find Daddy? Sophia asked. I couldn't answer. Instead, I sat on the couch and stared at my phone, waiting for it to ring, waiting for his name to light up the screen, but it never did. That was the last time I heard from Diego, for now. One text, one moment. Everything after that unraveled faster than I could keep up. By the time the sun set, our neighborhood would no longer be quiet. The streets would no longer feel like home. And I would begin a journey I never asked for, but one I refused to give up on. The sun set on Saturday, June 7th, and Los Angeles felt like it was holding its breath. That night, everything changed. By 6 p.m., word had spread across Westlake that ICE agents were still active, sweeping the fashion district, surrounding street corners. Vans with tinted windows were parked along alleys. People whispered in grocery stores and laundromats. Some families packed bags. Others turned off their porch lights and waited. But there were those who didn't hide. They marched. I watched it unfold from my window. People holding signs, chanting in Spanish and English. They weren't just undocumented families. They were students, teachers, street vendors, grandmothers, people who had nothing to lose. I couldn't stay inside. I called Lucia next door and asked her to watch Camilla and Sophia just a little longer. Please, I said. I need to see what's happening. I need to see if he's there. She didn't ask questions, just nodded. When I reached 6th and Main, it was like stepping into another world. People waved handmade signs. Families belong together. ICE out of LA. We are not your enemy. Someone passed me a bottle of water. Another handed me a mask. The air was tense, electric. You could feel something building. Then came the vans. Unmarked white vans rolled up slowly, windows tinted, doors shut. People stopped marching. They stood their ground, and then everything erupted. First came the shouts, then the flashes. Tear gas canisters hissed through the air, landing near trash bins and feet. LAPD in riot gear charged down the street, yelling orders. Rubber bullets cracked through the air like fireworks. Protesters screamed. Some threw bottles, some ran, others stood still, tears streaming down their faces, not from fear, but from gas. I ducked behind a food cart, heart pounding, coughing hard. A man beside me held a homemade med kit. Here, tilt your head, he said, pouring milk over my eyes. That's when I realized. I hadn't cried until now. By 9 p.m., the mayor's voice echoed from every phone and screen in the city. Effective immediately, a mandatory curfew will be in place in downtown Los Angeles from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. nightly until further notice. Mayor Karen Bass sounded calm, but it didn't feel like calm. It felt like a lockdown. I ran toward Wilshire, trying to get back home. Sirens flashed behind me. A group of protesters darted down the same sidewalk, faces masked, hands clutching banners. I ducked into a corner store and called Lucia. Are the girls okay? They're fine, sweetie. Just hurry back. They're asking about you. I took a longer route home, avoiding intersections where flashing lights and military-style vehicles blocked traffic. It felt like a war zone. When I finally burst through our front door, both Camila and Sophia ran to me, arms around my waist. Why are there so many helicopters? Camila asked. I had no words. I just held them. From our living room, we could hear the sirens, the rubber bullets, the chanting that refused to stop. I turned on the local news. They showed footage of broken windows, protesters being tackled, fires lit in trash bins and quickly put out. More than 100 people had been arrested. Some journalists were shoved back. But even on TV, the message was clear. This wasn't just about immigration anymore. It was about fear. And who gets to be safe in this country? I texted every number I had for Diego. Still no response. I checked with the local immigrant aid group, South Central Voices. But their voicemail said they were overwhelmed and wouldn't be able to respond for 48 hours. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding my daughters, listening to the world fall apart outside. Is Daddy okay? Sophia whispered. I didn't lie. I don't know, baby, but we're going to try everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching blue and red lights sweep through the streets like ghosts. Westlake wasn't the same neighborhood I had lived in for 12 years. And I wasn't the same woman who had kissed her husband goodbye just 18 hours earlier. I used to think that fear was something you could manage, that if you just followed the rules, filled out the forms, stayed quiet, you'd be safe. But now, I know better. Because Diego followed every rule. He kept his head down. He worked hard. He showed up. And they still came for him. By the time the sun rose on Monday, June 9th, the city had changed again. The protests hadn't stopped. They'd grown louder, braver, more desperate. And the government responded, not with answers, not with apologies, but with soldiers. 2,100 National Guard troops, 700 Marines, sent to Los Angeles without warning, without California's consent. They weren't here to keep the peace. They were here to shield ICE. That morning, I made breakfast like always. Eggs, toast, fruit, but nothing tasted like anything. Camila kept asking, "Are those real soldiers outside?" Sophia didn't say much, just kept peeking through the blinds. I looked out with her. From our third-floor window, I saw armored vehicles parked by the corner bakery. Soldiers with rifles, not drawn, but visible, stood near the schoolyard fence. It didn't feel like home anymore. Around 10 o'clock, I got a call from Pastor Miguel Garcia at Grace Unity Chapel. "We're organizing a relief team," he said. "Food, clothes, legal help, sanctuary if needed. Come by. Bring what you have." I packed a bag with everything I thought might help. Our rental agreement, Diego's pay stubs, Camila's school forms, Sophia's drawing of our family. I didn't know what would be useful, so I brought all of it. But I didn't go straight to the church. Word had spread that detainees were being processed near the Metropolitan Detention Center. Someone said ICE was preparing to move them to other locations. Lancaster, Victorville, out of state. I left the girls with Lucia and caught a bus downtown. The silence in the city was unnerving. Not empty, just guarded. Soldiers stood in front of shops, near buses, at traffic lights. At a checkpoint, 2 guards watched me walk by. One looked no older than 20. I didn't say anything. I didn't look back. When I reached the area near the courthouse, I saw the crowds again. Different from the protests, this one was quieter, tighter. Mostly women and children, husbands, grandparents. Some held signs, others just held each other. "Who are you looking for?" someone asked me. "My husband, Diego Alvarez," I said. "Taken Saturday morning. No updates." She pointed me toward a table. Volunteers were compiling names of detainees, trying to build a list since ICE wouldn't release one. Some had radios, others had legal pads. Most looked exhausted. I scanned the list taped to the metal fence, line after line of blurred names, and there he was, Alvarez Diego M. No location, no charges, just processing, hold. It was the first proof I'd had that he was still here, still alive. I didn't cry. I didn't even breathe. I just stared at it and whispered, "Thank you." That moment of relief didn't last. Shouts erupted. Protesters linked arms in front of the gate. Students chained themselves to the railings. They were chanting, "This is our city! We will not be silent! Shame on ICE!" Officers moved in, shields up, batons out. Someone threw a bottle. A warning was shouted. And then the tear gas came again. I covered my face with my scarf and stumbled back into the crowd, coughing. My eyes burned. Someone grabbed my arm. It was Pastor Garcia. "This way," he said, pulling me into an alley behind a building. We crouched near a dumpster, waiting for the smoke to clear. He handed me a damp cloth. "You okay?" "I saw Diego's name," I said. "He's still in Los Angeles. They haven't moved him. Yet." He nodded slowly. "Then we still have time." Back at the church, volunteers were sorting through stacks of cases, making calls, collecting affidavits. Some people were trying to locate lawyers. Others were preparing to testify on behalf of relatives. The whole place buzzed with urgency, with exhaustion, with purpose. I told them everything I knew, gave them Diego's name, uploaded his documents into a shared drive. They took it all and promised to fight. That evening, I returned home. Camila and Sophia sat on the couch waiting for me, holding their coloring books, but not really coloring, I found his name, I told them. He's okay. He's not home yet, but he's still here. That's something. Camilla asked, when can we see him? I don't know, sweetheart, but we're working on it. And that was the truth. That night I didn't cry. I didn't panic. For the first time in days, I felt something else. Determination. Hope doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it's just a name on a page, a stranger offering you a mask, a whispered prayer at a protest. That day, I didn't find Diego, but I found my voice. And I wasn't letting go. I didn't sleep much that night. Even with the curfew temporarily lifted for the morning hours, I could still feel the weight of the city pressing down. From our window, I watched shadows move. Soldiers, ICE agents, neighbors stepping out briefly and locking the door behind them as if the sky itself couldn't be trusted. But I had Diego's name on a list now. That was enough to get me moving again. Not rescued, not safe, but known. And so I went back downtown, alone, early, before the vans moved again. A friend from church had texted me just after sunrise. They're transferring people today. Mateo Street facility, some going to Lancaster, maybe Victorville. Go now if you want a chance to see anyone. I didn't think twice. I wrapped Diego's old hoodie around my waist and printed out the photo Camilla had drawn. I didn't know what good it would do. I just couldn't leave it behind. When I got to the lot, it was already filling with DHS vans, those white, unmarked ones with dark windows, rows of them, parked like they had all the time in the world. I stood across the street behind a chain-link fence, gripping the photo so hard my knuckles hurt. Then I saw him. He stepped out of a van, surrounded by 2 guards, his wrists zip-tied, head down. Same navy work shirt, still untucked, still stained. His hair was messier, his shoulders hunched, like the weight of this moment was crushing him inch by inch. He looked thinner, quieter. He looked like a man trying to disappear. I opened my mouth, but I couldn't say his name. I was afraid if I did, if I screamed, someone would drag me away, or worse, hurt him. And he hadn't seen me. Or maybe he had. Maybe he chose not to look so it wouldn't make it harder for either of us. They walked him toward another van and locked the doors behind him. And then he was gone again, just like that. I stood there, frozen, tears welling but not falling, with that picture still clutched in my hand, the one Sophia had drawn of all of us standing under a bright blue sun. I remembered the last time Diego danced with me. It was Camilla's birthday. We pushed the couch to the wall and turned up a bachata song we both loved. He spun me around, still in his socks. Sophia laughed so hard she fell over. He kissed my forehead and said, "Whatever happens, we've got each other." That memory hit me so hard I had to sit down. I couldn't protect him now. I couldn't even speak to him. Later that day, back at the church, I sat with Carlos Gonzalez, whose brother Jose had been arrested on the same day. We huddled at a folding table where volunteers passed out soup and granola bars. "They put chains on him," Carlos said. "I was right there. He still had his hard hat on. He didn't even get to drop it off." He rubbed his face like he was trying to erase it. I shouted his name. They wouldn't let him turn around. I tried to get closer, but it was chaos. "I don't even know where they took him." I nodded, blinking hard. "I saw Diego today," I said. "They moved him, but I don't know where to." Then for the first time in days, my phone rang. Blocked number. I answered on the first ring. "Marisol?" It was his voice, dry, thin, but real. "Diego!" I nearly shouted. "Are you okay? Where are you?" "I'm in a holding site. It's cold. Loud. No one tells us anything. I think we're being sent to court soon. They said something about missed check-ins." "That's not true," I said quickly. "You never missed one. I have everything. I've got your pay stubs, your letters, your case number. It doesn't matter to them," he interrupted. "They just want to clear the docket." I took a deep breath and steadied my voice. I'm working with people, Diego. There's a pastor, lawyers. Your name is on petitions. You're not invisible anymore. He was quiet. Then he whispered, "Get the girls safe. Don't let them see me like this." And then the line went dead. I didn't cry right away. I just sat on the church steps, staring at my phone screen, heart pounding. He was scared. I could hear it in the way he couldn't even say goodbye. But he was still here, and that meant I still had something to fight for. Later that evening, I gathered everything. Copies of forms, IDs, court notices. The church had started keeping case files in plastic tubs, labeled with tape and prayer. The volunteers told me a hearing might be possible if we acted fast, that we had to prove who Diego was, on paper, in photos, in memory. So I brought them everything, even the picture Camila had drawn, because sometimes a child's sketch speaks more truth than an entire immigration file. I don't know what's coming next, but I know this. They don't get to erase my husband. Not quietly. Not this time. By Tuesday night, Los Angeles wasn't quiet anymore. The fear that had once kept people behind closed doors had turned into something stronger, louder. Grief had turned into movement, worry into action. From Boyle Heights to Westlake, people gathered. They marched with signs, candles, and children on their shoulders. And I was one of them. I wasn't the kind of woman who protested. I had never marched before. But that week, I learned that silence was a privilege we couldn't afford anymore. Pastor Garcia handed me a neon vest and said, "Write his name on your shirt. Let them see who you're fighting for." I took a Sharpie and wrote across my chest in big, bold letters, "Diego Alvarez, husband, father, worker." Before I left the apartment, I tucked Camila and Sophia into bed. "Are you going to see Daddy tonight?" Camila asked. "I don't know, baby, but I need him to know we're still here, that we haven't stopped calling his name." They didn't cry. They just nodded, brave like he would have wanted them to be. By 6 p.m., I was on the move with hundreds of others heading toward the Metropolitan Detention Center. It wasn't just immigrant families. It was teachers, health workers, college kids, grandmothers holding candles, a veteran in uniform, a man playing guitar while walking. People handed out masks and water bottles. A little boy offered me a sign he'd colored in crayon. It said, "Let our families go." We got as close to the building as we could before federal officers blocked our path. Riot shields, helmets, no words. They stood like statues, like a wall made of silence. A woman in our group stepped forward with a megaphone and shouted, "We are not afraid!" Another voice echoed, "We are here for our families!" Then another, "We will not be silent!" The chants grew louder until gas canisters burst overhead. I couldn't breathe. I dropped the candle I was holding. Someone pulled me behind a newspaper stand. My eyes were burning, my throat closed. A man poured milk into my palms and told me to wash my face. And through all of it, I kept one thought in my head. Don't let go of why you came. They cleared us out. More than 200 people were arrested that night. Some dragged, some carried, some beaten, at least a dozen taken to the hospital. One was a pastor, one was 16. But I stayed. Even after the tear gas cleared, even when the sky turned black and the crowd thinned, I stayed. Because if they were going to erase our husbands, our brothers, our sisters, I wanted them to look me in the eye while they tried. The next morning, I woke up sore, my voice hoarse. But something had shifted. The news was everywhere. Governor Gavin Newsom had filed an emergency lawsuit against the federal government for deploying military forces to our streets without consent. His words hit me like a bolt of oxygen. This is unconstitutional, authoritarian, an insult to democracy. It didn't mean Diego was safe yet. But it meant someone in power was finally listening. Back at the church, I returned to the legal aid table. The air buzzed with updates. One of the volunteers said, "Someone just got out on bail. Guillermo Soto. Same day, same rate as your husband." I grabbed the updated list and scanned it with trembling fingers. Diego's name still wasn't there, but for the first time in days, I smiled, because someone made it home. And that meant there was a way. Pastor Garcia sat beside me as I held my head in my hands. "You fought for him," he said. "No matter what happens, your daughters will remember that." I nodded, but I didn't speak. Because I wanted more than memory. I wanted Diego to walk through our door again. That evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Marisol?" My heart jumped. "Diego!" "I'm still in holding. They said I might get a hearing. They called my name. Said someone filed something for me." "That was me," I said, tears filling my eyes. "And Pastor Garcia? And Anna from the legal team? And 20 others you don't even know. We're not giving up." He paused. I heard them. The chanting. "I knew you were out there. I always will be." He didn't say goodbye this time. He just said, "Thank you." When I got home, Camila gave me a new drawing. This one had all of us holding hands under a tree. Diego was smiling. "You should bring this to court," she said. I looked at it, and I realized she was right, because it wasn't just a drawing, it was testimony. Hope doesn't always arrive as freedom. Sometimes it's a voice on the phone, a name on a list, a little girl's picture in crayon. That week they tried to silence us, to break us, to scatter us. But we didn't scatter. We marched, and now we're heading for the courtroom. Because we're not done yet. By June 10th, the sirens had quieted. The curfew was lifted. Soldiers were pulling out of downtown. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the eye of a storm. The protests had rattled the city, hundreds arrested, dozens injured. But still, no real answers, no public accountability, no names released, and Diego still wasn't home. That morning, I sat in the back of Grace Unity Chapel, staring at my phone. I'd refreshed the ICE detainee database a dozen times. Nothing. No update. No movement. Just that same cold line. Processing. Hold. Across the room, other families waited. Some cried quietly. Some paced in tight circles. One woman kept repeating her husband's name under her breath like a prayer. Another clutched a baby and stared at the door like she could will someone through it. None of us had slept, but none of us were leaving either. I called the Mexican consulate again. It was the third time that day. A tired voice answered. "We believe a group of nationals were transferred overnight," she said. "Some may have already been deported. We are working to confirm names." I stood there, frozen. Not because she confirmed Diego was gone, but because she didn't. He wasn't on any list, not released, not deported, just suspended in the space between. I walked home and sat on the couch beside Camila and Sophia. "I don't know where Daddy is," I told them, "but I know he's still fighting, and so are we." Camila looked up at me. "Do people even care what's happening to us?" I thought for a moment. "Not everyone," I said, "but enough people do, enough to matter." That night, I watched the news again. Video clips flashed across the screen, footage from protests, interviews with attorneys, a candlelight vigil outside the detention center. The words, "civil rights violations," "denied phone calls," and "unlawful deportations" echoed from the anchor's mouth like bullets. One man, already deported, had a valid work visa. Another had lived in the U.S. for 28 years, and still, they were sent away. The rage in my chest burned hotter. But so did the fire to keep going. The next day, a new list arrived at the church, compiled from federal court records and immigration defense filings. A volunteer handed me the page. I scanned the names, barely breathing. And there it was. Alvarez, Diego M. Hearing scheduled. My knees nearly gave out. A court date. That meant someone filed. That meant he was still here. That meant we had a shot. Pastor Garcia looked at me and smiled. You see, we keep knocking until the door opens. I want to be ready, I said. He nodded. Then bring everything. Every photo, every pay stub, every drawing your daughters have ever made. And I did. That night, I stayed up organizing our life into folders. Marriage license, birth certificates, rent receipts, photos of birthdays and Christmases, Camila's first report card, Diego's W-2 forms, even his thank you letter from work. And right on top, I placed Sophia's drawing. All four of us under a yellow sun, holding hands. It was shaky and messy and perfect. Because that's what we are. Messy, human, worthy. The next morning, Camila handed me a new note. She had written it herself. Tell them my dad is not a bad man. Tell them he makes the best pancakes. That letter went in the folder, too. Because if they wanted to decide Diego's fate, they were going to have to see him. Not just as a name on a list, but as a father, as a husband, as the man who helped her learn to ride a bike and stayed up late patching our leaky sink. This story started with silence, with a text message and no reply, but it didn't end there. Because now we speak, now we organize, now we march, now we show up in courtrooms with our baby's drawings and our heads held high. I still don't know what will happen. I don't know if the judge will listen. I don't know if the papers will be enough. But I know this. I will be there. Camila's letter will be there. Our love will be there. And Diego will not be alone. Because when they came for him, they didn't just take one man. They awoke an army of voices, and we're not going quiet again.